Daniel and Megan Martin seemed like the perfect couple, a loving husband, a devoted wife, and a picturesque life in Maplewood. But beneath the surface of their seemingly idyllic marriage lay dark secrets that would unravel in the most chilling way. When Megan disappeared, Daniel played the heartbroken spouse, weeping at press conferences and leading search efforts. Yet, as the investigation unfolded, it became clear that the man begging for answers was hiding the most sinister truth of all. He was Megan's killer. In the quiet, picturesque town of Maplewood, nestled among rolling hills and sprawling forests, Daniel and Megan Martin were a couple everyone admired. Their lives seemed like the perfect storybook, complete with a charming home, 2 young children, and careers that aligned with their aspirations. Megan was a beloved schoolteacher whose warmth and kindness made her a favorite among students and parents alike. Daniel was a successful businessman, charismatic and well-connected, often seen as the life of every neighborhood gathering. Together they seemed untouchable, the kind of couple others aspired to emulate. Megan had a natural way of drawing people in, whether it was through her thoughtful gestures or her ability to listen deeply and offer genuine advice. She had built a reputation not just as a teacher but as a cornerstone of the community. Whether she was organizing fundraisers for the school or dropping off casseroles for neighbors in need, Megan radiated kindness. Daniel, on the other hand, balanced her nurturing demeanor with his outgoing charm. His confidence and polished appearance made him a natural leader, a man who seemed destined for success. Together, they were the golden couple of Maplewood, a shining example of what a happy, thriving family could look like. It was a chilly October morning when the illusion began to crack. Megan didn't show up for work. Her colleagues initially assumed she might be running late, but as the hours passed and calls to her phone went unanswered, concern began to mount. It wasn't like Megan to be unresponsive, let alone miss a day of teaching without notice. Her closest friend at the school decided to reach out to Daniel, who answered with an edge of panic in his voice. Megan, he explained, had gone out for her usual morning jog but hadn't returned. Word spread quickly, and soon a search effort was underway. Friends, neighbors, and volunteers combed through parks, trails, and every corner of the town, calling her name into the brisk autumn air. The local police joined in, coordinating the search and questioning anyone who might have seen Megan that morning. Daniel became the face of the desperate hunt for his wife, appearing at every press conference with red-rimmed eyes and a trembling voice. He begged anyone with information to come forward, emphasizing how much Megan meant to their family and how devastating her absence was. The sight of Daniel holding their children close during these appearances broke hearts across Maplewood. He looked like a man utterly shattered by the loss of his soulmate, a devoted husband doing everything he could to bring her home. Megan's friends and family rallied around him, offering support and clinging to the hope that she would be found safe. As days turned into weeks, the town's anxiety deepened. Megan's absence cast a shadow over the once vibrant community. Yellow ribbons appeared on lampposts and mailboxes, a symbol of solidarity and hope. Yet, beneath the surface of Daniel's grief-stricken demeanor, subtle cracks were forming, details that didn't quite add up, in the sense that something wasn't as it seemed. The perfect life he had built with Megan was unraveling, and with it, the dark secrets he had worked so hard to conceal. 2 agonizing weeks passed with no sign of Megan Martin. The town of Maplewood clung to hope, but each passing day brought a growing sense of dread. Search efforts intensified, with volunteers venturing into dense woods and remote trails, hoping against hope to find some trace of the beloved schoolteacher. Her family, including her grieving husband, Daniel, continued to plead for information, their faces etched with desperation during press conferences broadcast across the state. It was on a crisp morning, as the autumn leaves crunched underfoot, that a hiker exploring a secluded forested area stumbled upon something no one wanted to find. At first, it was just an unusual patch of disturbed earth. But as the hiker leaned closer, the sickening realization dawned. Calling the authorities, they stayed rooted to the spot, shaken by the grim discovery. When the police arrived, they carefully unearthed the remains. What they found confirmed the town's worst fears. It was Megan. Her body was buried in a shallow grave, hastily covered with dirt and leaves. The forensic team worked meticulously, collecting evidence, photographing the scene, and delicately removing Megan's remains for examination. The discovery shattered any remaining hope of her safe return and plunged Maplewood into mourning. The coroner's report revealed that Megan had been killed by blunt force trauma to the head. The brutality of the act shocked the small town, and the community, once gripped by hope, now seethed with a mixture of grief and anger. How could such a kind, gentle soul meet such a violent end? Who could do something so unspeakable to someone as beloved as Megan? The police launched a full-scale homicide investigation, starting with Megan's last known activities. They retraced her steps, interviewed neighbors, and examined surveillance footage from businesses near her usual jogging route. Initially, their focus turned to a man with a criminal record who lived near the area where Megan's body was found. He had a history of violent outbursts and was known to frequent the trails where she often jogged. But as investigators dug deeper, it became clear he wasn't their man. His alibi was airtight, backed by multiple witnesses and security camera footage. The case, which had briefly seemed on the verge of a breakthrough, suddenly hit a wall. Leads were drying up, and the public grew restless for answers. All the while, Daniel Martin remained a visible presence. He attended every community vigil, clutching photos of Megan and their children as tears streamed down his face. His pain seemed genuine, his loss deeply felt. He spoke openly about the void her death had left in their lives and the need to bring her killer to justice. Yet behind the scenes, investigators were beginning to take a closer look at the grieving husband. Certain details about Daniel's behavior didn't sit right. For one, his calm composure during the early stages of the search had struck some as odd, as though he had known from the start that Megan wouldn't be found alive. And then there were the inconsistencies in his account of that fateful morning, details that raised more questions than answers. As the town mourned, the police quietly shifted their focus, determined to uncover the truth. What they would find in the weeks to come would leave Maplewood reeling. The man who had been at the center of the town's collective sympathy might not have been the devoted husband he appeared to be. The mask of grief that Daniel wore so convincingly was starting to crack, revealing the shadows lurking beneath. As the investigation into Megan Martin's murder deepened, detectives began piecing together a troubling timeline of events. Daniel Martin, the heartbroken husband who had become the public face of the search for Megan, was no longer just a grieving spouse in their eyes. Small inconsistencies in his story were beginning to stand out, raising questions about his version of what had happened the morning Megan disappeared. Daniel had told police he was home when Megan left for her jog, but his phone records painted a different picture. At 6:42 a.m., just minutes after he claimed to have last seen her, his cell phone pinged a tower miles away from their house, in a direction opposite to Megan's jogging route. Investigators followed up on this lead and uncovered security footage from a gas station near the area. The footage showed Daniel's car driving past at 6:48 a.m., heading toward the wooded area where Megan's body was later found. When confronted with this evidence, Daniel offered a vague explanation, claiming he had left the house to pick up coffee but had decided against it and returned home. The story didn't add up. None of the local coffee shops had records of him making a purchase that morning, and his car's GPS data contradicted his claim, showing he had parked in the vicinity of the woods for nearly 30 minutes before heading back. Detectives also began to uncover troubling details about Daniel's financial situation. To the outside world, the Martins seemed to live a comfortable life, but behind closed doors, Daniel was drowning in debt. Credit card bills had been piling up, business ventures were failing, and the couple was facing the possibility of selling their home. Adding to this revelation was Megan's life insurance policy, a sizable $500,000 payout that had been updated only 6 months before her death. While this provided a possible motive, the evidence was still circumstantial. Investigators needed more to connect Daniel directly to Megan's murder. As they dug deeper, they found other red flags that couldn't be ignored. Witnesses reported that Daniel's behavior in the weeks following Megan's disappearance seemed rehearsed, even calculated. While his public appearances were marked by tears and heartfelt pleas, those close to him described moments where he seemed detached, even cold. Neighbors recalled seeing him late at night, pacing in his driveway or sitting in his car for hours. One described overhearing a heated argument between Daniel and Megan just days before she vanished. Megan's close friends shared that she had recently confided in them about tension in her marriage, hinting at issues she wasn't ready to disclose fully. The turning point came when investigators conducted a thorough forensic search of Daniel's car. In the trunk, they discovered traces of soil that matched the burial site where Megan had been found. Additionally, microscopic blood stains, later identified as Megan's, were detected in the lining of the trunk. The evidence was damning, and it told a chilling story, one that contradicted Daniel's claims of innocence. While Daniel continued to project the image of a grieving husband, police were building a case against him. The man who had once seemed like the picture of despair was now at the center of a growing storm of suspicion. Maplewood, still reeling from the loss of Megan, braced itself for the truth. The cracks in Daniel's story had grown too large to ignore, and with every revelation, the illusion of his innocence began to crumble. The investigation took an explosive turn when detectives uncovered a secret that added a new layer of betrayal to the case. As they delved deeper into Daniel Martin's life, they stumbled upon evidence of an affair, one that struck painfully close to home. Daniel had been romantically involved with Olivia Martin, Megan's younger sister. The revelation sent shockwaves through Megan's family and the entire town of Maplewood. Olivia had always been close to Megan, often visiting the Martin household and spending time with the children. To most, she was a doting aunt and a supportive sister. But behind closed doors, a clandestine relationship between her and Daniel had been unfolding for over a year. Hidden phone records, secret text messages, and witness accounts of their private meetings painted a damning picture. Detectives discovered that Olivia had been an unwitting accomplice in Daniel's facade. Text messages showed her expressing doubts about the relationship, torn between guilt and her feelings for Daniel. In the weeks leading up to Megan's disappearance, their messages grew tense, with Olivia pushing Daniel to make a decision about their future. She feared Megan was beginning to suspect the affair, and her fears were well-founded. Interviews with Megan's close friends revealed she had confronted Daniel about his infidelity shortly before her disappearance. Megan had confided in one friend that she intended to leave him and take the children with her. This revelation raised the stakes for Daniel, whose financial troubles and desire to maintain control over his life made Megan's plans a significant threat. A divorce would not only expose his secrets, but also deny him access to Megan's life insurance payout, a sum he desperately needed to escape his mounting debts. When detectives questioned Olivia, her initial responses were evasive, but she eventually broke under the pressure of mounting evidence. She admitted to the affair and described how Daniel had manipulated her, convincing her that Megan didn't understand him and that their relationship was doomed. Olivia confessed that Daniel had promised her a future together, one where they could live openly without the constraints of his marriage. The timing of Megan's murder aligned too closely with these revelations to be a coincidence. Prosecutors began to piece together a theory. Daniel, desperate to maintain his financial standing and keep Olivia by his side, saw Megan's knowledge of the affair and her plans to leave him as insurmountable obstacles. Killing her would solve his problems, freeing him from the threat of divorce and granting him access to the life insurance money. Olivia's testimony added another chilling layer to the case. She recounted how Daniel had grown increasingly erratic in the days before Megan disappeared, talking about how their lives would be better once the dust settled. While she claimed not to have known about his plans to kill Megan, her testimony revealed his manipulative nature and willingness to do whatever it took to achieve his goals. As the details of the affair came to light, the public's perception of Daniel shifted dramatically. The man once seen as a devoted husband and grieving father was now exposed as a deceitful, cold-blooded manipulator. For Megan's family, the betrayal ran even deeper, knowing that someone they trusted, someone they loved, had been complicit in the unraveling of her life. The discovery of the affair not only provided a motive but also solidified the case against Daniel. What had initially seemed like a tragic disappearance was now unmistakably a calculated act of violence, driven by greed, betrayal, and a dark desire for control. With the affair exposed and forensic evidence mounting, the case against Daniel Martin was rapidly solidifying. Detectives moved to arrest him on charges of first-degree murder, shocking the town of Maplewood and shattering the image of the grieving husband he had so carefully crafted. His once sympathetic public persona quickly transformed into that of a manipulative, cold-blooded killer who had orchestrated an unthinkable betrayal. The trial that followed was nothing short of a spectacle, drawing nationwide attention. Prosecutors presented a meticulous case, laying out the sequence of events that led to Megan's murder. They described how Daniel had lured Megan into a confrontation on the morning of her disappearance, driven by the knowledge that her plans to leave him would unravel his life. They argued that his decision to kill her was both premeditated and ruthless, motivated by financial desperation and his affair with her sister. The forensic evidence was damning. Soil samples found in Daniel's car trunk matched the area where Megan's body had been buried, and traces of her blood were discovered on the lining. Combined with the cell phone records and GPS data that placed Daniel near the burial site, the physical evidence painted a grim picture of his actions that morning. But what truly captivated the courtroom and the nation was Olivia Martin's testimony. Reluctantly taking the stand, she revealed the extent of her relationship with Daniel and the manipulation she had endured. She recounted how he had used her feelings against her, spinning stories about his unhappiness in his marriage and convincing her that they could have a future together. Olivia's voice trembled as she described the guilt and shame she carried, knowing her involvement had indirectly contributed to the unraveling of Megan's life. Olivia's most chilling revelation came when she described a conversation with Daniel in the weeks leading up to Megan's disappearance. He had assured her that everything would work out soon and hinted that Megan was standing in the way of their happiness. While she insisted she had no knowledge of his plan to kill Megan, her testimony revealed his manipulative and calculated nature, painting a portrait of a man willing to destroy lives for his own gain. The defense attempted to poke holes in the prosecution's case, arguing that the evidence was circumstantial and that Daniel's grief was genuine. They suggested that his inconsistencies were the result of shock and confusion rather than guilt. However, the weight of the evidence and the testimony of key witnesses, including Olivia, proved overwhelming. After weeks of testimony and deliberation, the jury delivered their verdict guilty on all counts. Daniel was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As the sentence was read, he maintained his innocence, his expression void of remorse. For the town of Maplewood, the trial's conclusion brought a sense of closure but not complete healing. Megan's death had left a permanent scar on the community, a reminder of how appearances can mask the darkest of truths. Her family, though still grappling with the immense pain of losing her, vowed to preserve her memory as a beacon of kindness and love. Daniel's conviction exposed the lengths to which a person could go to protect their secrets and satisfy their desires. The man who once played the grieving husband had been unmasked as a calculating murderer. Megan's life, though tragically cut short, became a symbol of resilience and justice, ensuring that her voice would never be silenced, even in the face of betrayal and deceit.